Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw. In terms of the images that I have, the one that's probably the best in terms of usability is the one of it looks like a Japanese. Okay, so let's say roughly the image is split in half, with the bottom being a river and some trees flowering, and the top
Yes.
half is this hillside going up rather steeply, and it looks like blossoms, like trees are blossoming, so it's spring. Small, low rise houses. It's I wouldn't say midday, but it's probably early, like 11 in the morning or 10 in the morning. Nice bright clouds.
Yeah.
It looks kind of cool because you could just see a few people on the left wearing jackets walking by. There are some nice yellow buttercup style flowers, adding some nice splashes of yellow, and the blossoms on the trees are pink. So what's this image?
Yeah. So this is an image of a place we went to outside of Tokyo. A lot of times when we're there, we'll try at least once when we visit to go stay at a ryokan, which is like a kind of traditional countryside inn in Japan. So it's sort of a space. I kind of liked this scene because it's outside of a train station. So, I mean, if you were to turn around and look behind me, there's sort of like the train station and kind of like a more bustling, sort of busy area. But with my back to the train station facing down the little river, it really looks like this kind of small town countryside type of scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like this, just when I walked out of the train station, kind of looked down river there, it just seemed like such a contrast from, kind of like the bustling, densely packed sort of city environment that we came from. And I feel like, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned, how there can be these stark differences in Italy, even though it's a very small country. But something similar that we see in Japan, because I mean they've got the record for the most population density of any place in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yet you can go to places where there's not that many people around, and it really looks like something from 100 years ago. And you have these old buildings, and so that was kind of what.
My frame of reference when I looked at this was, this is going to sound very strange to you, but or maybe not. It looks like Mont Saint-Hilaire.
Oh yeah.
So like for example, like the mount on the right with rather pretty steep cliffs going up.
That's right.
And the river. And I was thinking, well, it could be Mont Saint-Hilaire with the apple trees.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it's kind of a funny little like double take or whatever. Like that scene could so easily be there in Quebec, and yet when you look at it more closely, you realize no, that's clearly not Quebec.
Yeah, definitely. Like, because I mean, you kind of need to zoom in, and like I would say, the buildings too don't necessarily
match.
Yeah.
Okay, so how many times have you gone? So when you go to Japan, do you mostly go to Tokyo, or do you go outside of Tokyo, or like?
Mostly we go to Tokyo because that's where Aki's family is. So we, typically we'll stay in Tokyo, but then usually, we'll try a little trip outside of Tokyo somewhere, right? And so that's it's kind of like a thing to do there, like just go outside of Tokyo for just a couple of days, and you stay at a ryokan. And because the country is pretty small, you can actually, when you go outside of Tokyo, like every region, every prefecture kind of prides themselves on the sort of local flavor, right, and local food and local culture. And so you don't need to go very far from Tokyo to have this kind of experience of like eating food that you've never had before, or just even, the local dialects will be pretty, pretty distinct. So, yeah.
Okay, so when you go, how long do you usually stay for?
I mean, recently I will usually stay for around 2 weeks, I would say, if I go.
Hmm.
And then, of course, since Nika has been school age, we shifted from going in the spring. Like, so you see this picture that we're talking about, it was taken in the spring. So that's
Hmm.
probably one of the last times we visited in the spring when Nika was very little. But, since she's been school age, we typically go in the summer, and she
Hmm.
attends public school there because their
Oh, okay.
summer break doesn't exactly correspond to our summer break. So she can leave
Right.
here right after school's out and still get another
Mm-hmm.
month of school in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And so we always go in the summer. So they stay longer.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I've been facing and thinking about is people who are our age, where we're in film photography and you didn't have cameras in your phones and there were cameras everywhere as
Yeah.
ubiquitous and images weren't as like saturating our lives as much.
Yeah.
There's this kind of relationship, I guess, to image making and to just, I don't know, like connecting to the past that
Hmm.
is different. You know what I mean? Like in terms of how we reflect back to our experience, right? Like, so now you've got this image of Japan, and you get back to it, pretty easily. But do you
Yeah.
remember like making photographs when we were in high school, right? So the black and white style with our like Pentax, whatever it was,
Yeah.
K1000 or whatever it was. How do you feel like that's matured in terms of also in terms of your own brain, like in terms of your own sort of mind and maturity? This is not a clear question. I tend to ask questions that I'm
Yeah.
like,
Like,
well, he's talking a lot, but
no, I think it's, like it's changed at least in part because of the devices and the ease of use, Like I remember when I first got into photography, like my dad had to show me how to use the camera. Like it wasn't really
right,
obvious, right? And
right.
like I screwed up roll after roll of film in the early period, and you didn't even know you screwed it up until you actually got the photos, and you're like, oh man, like this is terrible. Like it's out of focus, or it's and so I feel like there was it needed more initiative back then, but you had to be like you make this conscious effort that okay, this event warrants archiving or recording, like, and I'm going to bring my camera, I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be ready, and there's going to be it requires some kind of like effort.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas over the years, I feel like, as things have gotten a lot easier now, it's like so easy, right? Everyone pulls out their phone and it's like you're just taking like hundreds of photos of everything, of anything, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I kind of feel like sometimes you look back at the photos, from high school and you're like, yeah, that was a good idea taking that photo, like as you captured
Yeah.
something. You went out of your way to capture something. Whereas now it's like, you got to browse through like, 50 photos to find one that's, because you're just taking photos of everything, you just snap
Right. Right. Right.
whatever's going on, just pull out your camera and snap a photo.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's really funny because I feel like people much younger than me are like, it's almost like this paradox because in a way, I feel like it's really easy to take photos now, but I'm still not of the generation that's always taking photos of everything or taking video of everything,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because I still, I grew up in that time where like it's an occasion when you want to take a
Right.
photo. And I've done, I'm participating in events or done things or whatever where afterwards somebody younger than me will just matter of factly say, you have a video of it or photos? And I'm like,
Uh huh.
no,
Mm-hmm.
why would I have a photo of it? And they're like, I don't know. Like, and it's like, they're kind of surprised because they're like, well, you would have a photo of it because you should have photos of everything that you do.
Right, right.
So it's funny that way.
Okay, I don't know why she swallowed a fly. Something about what you said got me thinking about let's say from this time that made this image that I'm looking at right now. What was going on in your life at this time right now? Like, you know, when this image was made, you're obviously you're in Tokyo, but
Yeah.
what stage of you're living in Vancouver? Yes.
Yeah, I would have been living in Vancouver and working for the same company I was working for now. And I think my daughter would have been probably on the younger side. Maybe.
So we've seen each other off and on over the years, and my apologies for not remembering what led you into the work that you're doing. Is that more in terms of the counselor side, social work side?
So it's, here we call it community living, right? So it's basically
Right.
Supporting adults with developmental disabilities to be in community, to live in community, to have good lives with whatever support that they might require. So the agency that I work for does a lot of different types of supports, but I don't really work in kind of direct care, direct support. So I work more in the sort of on the management side.
Okay, so I live in Hong Kong, and I feel that Hong Kong is decades behind Canada in a way. I find that Canada is this funny place that is very progressive,
Yeah.
but is also not especially self-promotional in the way that Americans are, you know? So I find Canada is like super progressive in many, many ways, and yet, you know, keep a kind of a low profile and just do the more progressive stuff. So let's compare the work you're doing or sort of your daily life in Vancouver versus when you go back to Tokyo and you sort of see obviously the challenges of a much larger population. What kind of observations would you make in terms of community living between the two sort of cities?
It's interesting because I consider Japan to be sort of a more, if you have like this continuum between individualistic kind of society to like a more communalistic society. I feel like Japan is kind of more on the communalistic side. And, it's kind of highlighted in this idea that, over there, people care about how their behavior is going to affect their neighbor, right? That's kind of at its root. Whereas, in the more individualistic, and I would say probably the United States is at that other end. There, it's kind of like I should be free to do whatever I want with no constraints. And, you're less concerned about how your freedom to do whatever you want will affect your neighbor. And I feel like Canada's probably not, as far over that end as the United States, but they're probably a little bit more to that end. Yet, interestingly, Japan is I would say behind in terms of how the more kind of vulnerable people in their communities are treated, right?
Right.
And so in terms of like really innovating in that area, right? Like how people with disability, developmental or otherwise, how can we make sure that everyone has a really good life? I think we're probably further ahead here than they are over there, which is interesting given that they're on one level very communalistic, right? It's like the idea that we should all care for each other and support each other. But
what kind of challenges have dealing with COVID brought to your works? Like, has it really changed how you guys are working?
Oh yeah, dramatically, right? Because the services that our frontline workers provide are considered essential services, right? So, we have some services that are running 24 hours a day, like residential services, where people are supported to live in their homes.
Right.
So workers are going into work all the time. And so we've had to do a lot in terms of like COVID precautions. And then we've had outbreaks in our programs where either a person served like a client or a staff member or both multiple people got sick with COVID. And yet, for example, if a client tests positive, we can't not serve them. And so they'll need staff to be working during the course of an and because some of the training we do, was able to shift to online, but other training that we do necessarily needs to happen in person. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, there was a person that had attended one of my training sessions later tested positive for COVID-19. And so then, everybody who had been at that training session, including me, we have to kind of self-monitor for like a certain period of time for any potential symptoms, in the end, nothing came of that, but it still sort of highlights that even though I'm kind of at arm's length, you're never like 100%, right? It's because of the work that the agency's doing. There's always some thread there.
Right. Do you know anybody like, other than, the coworkers, but has anybody in your family or anything like that who's tested positive?
No, nobody in my direct family.
Yeah. My sister, her whole little family got COVID. And, so on the podcast, she talks about the shame. I sort of teased her about, like what was worse, getting COVID or I don't know if it was chlamydia or gonorrhea. And she's like, well, first of all, I've never had gonorrhea. And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever you say. But
that's funny.
But she's just like, yeah, there's a huge shame involved with, when you get tested positive. And I can imagine for you with your work, because in a way it's an essential service for many people's lives. Like, you really are a huge part of maybe even, I don't know, would you use the word survival?
Yeah, I mean, I would say anything that's like an essential service is really, like it's something that we cannot pause or curtail for any reason. So yeah, for some of the people that we support, I would say it's pretty essential for survival. And I mean, it's sort of a testament to the kind of remarkable resiliency of our staff, right? Because to think we have a kind of a 24-hour on-call coverage sort of system. So like, for example, if somebody calls in sick or can't make it to their shift, we can't close up shop, right? And that shift has to be filled.
Sure.
So we need to call somebody else in for that shift. And so it can be a difficult undertaking. Say I'm sick with COVID-19 and the staff who's working with me can't make it to work. And so then somebody calls you and says, hey, Rand, you gotta go in. Can you pick up that shift? And FYI, Hemant has COVID-19, and you have to decide whether you want to pick that shift up or not. And to think that our staff, by and large, are filling those shifts. Like they're saying, sure, I'll come in, I'll cover for whoever's sick. I mean, it's pretty humbling.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.